Okay. And so, as I said, the parliamentary speeches are a social treasure since they contain all possible knowledge about the last couple of centuries. These are two pages from the Italian parliament. One is the really first the really first meeting in 1848 in Italy. It was the Camera or Senato, I don't remember, one of the two chambers, and the second one is the first after the Second World War. In 1943, the Italian Parliament stops to work, and they go back to 1945 after the end of the war. So what are parliamentary speeches? Parliamentary speeches are the official transcript of the parliamentary debates. So people speak during the parliamentary debates, and there are people writing down, especially some years ago now, I guess they use something more technological to write down the speeches. Okay, the purpose is to keep a trace of what happens in the parliament, obviously. It has, as we said, an historical importance. For example, in the Italian parliamentary speech, you can find all these events. For people who are not Italian, maybe some of these events can be not so famous, but for Italians, for example, in 1848, Statuto Albertino was the first version of the constitution, let me say. It was not very strong. In fact, during the fascist era, they could change very easily. In 1861, there was the Kingdom of Italy, so Italy was united. And there was a First World War, the Second World War, the universal suffrage, so from 1946 also women could vote. And in 1957, there was the foundation of the European Union. And all these events are written in the parliamentary debates. These studies has also relevance now. In fact, there are a lot of studies about using this data, especially now that we can use technological stuff to study also very big corpora. For example, in this graph, you can see the distribution of the word climate change in the Hansard corpus. The Hansard corpus is the transcription of the British Parliament from 1803, I guess. So you can see that climate change is a word that appears only in the last 30 years. What happens here? I'm trying new stuff, but they're not working. I wanted to follow me. Yeah, it works. Okay, because there is this screen. So if I go there. Okay, so why to analyze the parliamentary speeches? They offer a unique perspective on society. They represent a rich corpus. It's very rich. In the Italian one, from 1848 to 2022, is 5 million pages. So it's really, really huge, including also some debates in the commissions. So not only the parliament, but also the commission, but the commissions are something related to the parliament. And okay, they also allow us to study the opinions in the people. You can see, for example, that some topics arise in some period of time. For example, for migration, you can see that the immigration topic arises in the last years, while no one was talking about it in the 70s of the last century. Okay, I want to, can I use this to read, but it's too small. I cannot read from here. So I don't need to go there. Studying the parliamentary speeches can lead to some goals. You can perform lexical studies, like the one I showed you in the graph. So you can, for example, search for a term, how often some topics were discussed in the history. You can see also grammatical structures. For example, you can observe that some words or some structures are not present anymore now, for example, but was present in the 19th century. You can also, if you have also the speakers, for example, in the Hansard corpus and the Italian corpus, you have also a metadata on who is speaking. You can also perform studies on gender, on political parties, and so on. Also, for example, geographical provenance. So if you want to compare people from southern Italy or northern Italy, since, for example, in the first version of the Italian parliamentary speech, Italy was only the north of Italy, Regno di Sardegna. Kingdom of Sardinia, I don't know if all of you knows. And this is before 1861. After 1861, also the south of Italy was annexed to Italy. So you can also perform studies about the differences in the provenance. And also you can see this is an example of how language changed between 1954 to 2006. In 1954 this was a very complex language. Vane e poco efficaci resteranno sempre le provvidenze predisposte a far sviluppare e prosperare l'industria sugheriera, and so on. And now we have populista, comunista, sei vecchio. This is how the language in the... it's very nice because if you go and read parliamentary speeches from 1950, 1960, there was a lot of insults. I mean, they talk each other in a very bad way, but it was also a very smart way. Okay, now they're more. Okay, you can also study ideological trends. For example, how the idea on a particular topic changed in the history. Also, you can examine the rhetorical strategies of the parliamentary members. So, for example, propaganda, how people from different parties deal with the same topic. And also, you can, especially in the last years, you can also perform studies on inclusion. So let's talk about gender, orientation, religion, and so on. Parliamentary speeches are formal records, so they are unofficial documents. And they reflect the interactions between the parliamentary members. So you can find the single speeches. So it's not a sort of summary, but it's a real transcription. So this is very interesting also for the language, for example. As a characteristics, it's formal. So the language, unless you see the last 20 years, there is a lot of rhetorics. So you can see persuasion, how people defend his position, and so on. And it is interesting also because you can see the interaction between people. So it's a real dialogue between people. It's not just a transcription of what they discussed. It's a real dialogue, so you can see how people interact with each other. And this is very interesting if you try to read the speeches. Okay, there is also the influence of institutional rules on linguistic structures. This was true especially for the older documents, because now the spoken language and written language are very similar. There are some differences, but not that much. 2 centuries ago, there was a lot of difference between the written language and the spoken language. This, for example, is one of the first session in May 1848, and you can see a very, very complex language. So, adunatasi la Camera verso un'ora pomeridiana in una sala al piano terreno. Or, il Presidente con breve allocuzione in cui protestando di avere a sommo onore. This was not the way they spoke in that years. But when you write down or when you speak in an assembly, you probably use this kind of language. Okay? This, for example, was a description. Il Presidente con breve allocuzione in cui protestando was not a real transcription, but it was a description of what the President was doing. You can find this kind of descriptions in the parliamentary speeches, and this was not obviously the spoken language. Or here, was during the fascist era, so June 1941, il Duce fa il suo ingresso nell'aula, l'assemblea scatta in piedi, anche i presenti nelle tribune si alzano, scoppia un'impetuosa, ardente, entusiastica, prolungata acclamazione. This was obviously the language of these years. And in 2008, this was a very, very famous event in Italian history. It was when the Prodi government ended early, and i senatori Strano e Gramazio stappano una bottiglia di spumante. There was a bottle of, and per favore togliete quella bottiglia, non siamo mica all'osteria. This is a very spoken language. The president of the assembly told to these 2 senators not to have the bottle of wine, to have a party because the government ended prematurely. Okay, so this was also the change in the discussion. And this is very interesting if you need to perform social studies. So you can deal with evolution of the vocabulary, and this is very interesting, for example, also for semantic shift. There is a slide about this. Oh, there is the second point. So, for example, a particular word can change its meaning during time, and this is also very interesting to study. And also the influence of technology. Come on, at least from 2 points of view, from the technical point of view. So for older documents, you don't have a very, very precise transcription because you need to apply OCR and so on. And also in the discussion. So when you discuss, you can you add a technological layer on all the discussion, because now we have mobile phones, everyone has a smartphone, and so on. So this also have an impact on the speeches. Another point of view is the point of view of the people. So our representative in the parliament usually should speaks about the problems of the country, so you can understand which were the problems of the country by reading the parliamentary speeches. For example, there is a speech from the 50s that it was, I found it because it was 500 pages long, 500 pages of one single speech in the Italian parliament, and it was about, okay, I don't know how to translate it, the mondine, the women who take the rice in the water. And there was a very, very long discussion because they want to increase the rights. One party was to increase the rights for these women. The other parties did not agree, and they discussed it for 3 days continuously. So, and it was 500 pages. And this, I said, oh, come on, for the mondine, really? In 50 was a so important issue. This, yes, it was an important issue. So you can find also this kind of information. And also you can track the conflicts. For example, this was an ideological conflict. One party wanted to increase the rights for the mondine, the other one didn't want. There is also you can study also diversity in languages. As we said, when Italy was unified, the language was not that uniform in the whole Italy. Some people say that, for example, some very famous books like Promessi Sposi by Alessandro Manzoni was also a sort of way to unify the language. And also the television in the 20th century, it was an instrument to unify the language, because before the television and before the unification of Italy, different regions had very, very different languages, and this is reflected in the parliamentary speeches. Also, this is another interesting study that you can perform now, that you have a lot of parliamentary speeches from different countries. You can also see there are studies about that, on how to compare different ideas in different countries at the same time. So, for example, you want to see how immigration is discussed in different countries. For example, in 2015, that was the year where there was the most immigration in Europe, and you can see how different countries deal with the same topic. Also, you can study the distribution of the words, because if you see an entire corpus in a numerical way, you can, for example, identify some information that you cannot find by just reading some documents. For example, in the Hansard corpus, so the UK Parliament, you can see that they spoke about Italy in 1860, when Italy was unified, and in 1930. You can guess why, okay? For the fascism. There are some challenges in doing this. The first challenge is a technical challenge. I worked with OCR a lot when I passed all the documents through Tesseract, and for older documents it's very, very difficult to extract something clean, because the documents are very dirty, because the words are very difficult, and some OCR tools has vocabularies in them. So if a word is not present in the vocabulary and is not written cleanly, probably the OCR tool will fail in recognize. There are some linguistic challenges, as we said. There is ambiguities. For example, some words can change their meaning in the history. And there is also a challenge in analyze huge amount of data. If you need to analyze 5 million pages, it's very hard to do. You need to know how to do it, and you need to also to understand what you're looking for. Okay, this was a sort of introduction. Let's go on with the analysis. So we will go into deep in which kind of analysis you can perform on parliamentary speeches. First of all, we can split the analysis into two kinds. So you can perform quantitative analysis. So as we say, let's count how many times the word Italy has been spoken in the British Parliament. This is a quantitative analysis, or a qualitative analysis. So you read the documents manually, and you can, for example, understand that the language changed. So you can see that during fascist period, a lot of people were, okay, il duce è entrato, let's stand up, all stand up, because, okay. So the language changed, but you need to perform a qualitative analysis, so you need to read the documents. You also can perform combined methodologies and merge the two things into the same thing, as we said for the word Italy in the UK Parliament. Okay, let's count how many times the word Italy has been said, and then try to understand why. for example, in 1860 because Italy was unified. For example, when you apply combined methodologies, you can use quantitative analysis, so you can count word frequencies, sentiment scores. Sentiment scores can be seen as something not quantitative, but it's quantitative if you run a tool on the whole corpus and extract data. Okay, it's quantitative whenever you do this kind of analysis. And then you can, for example, analyzing argumentation strategies, so the words told by a party or another party or a particular politician from the north or the south of Italy, and count words also using metadata. Then you can integrate, there was a qualitative, okay, this was qualitative. Okay, in fact, argumentation strategies was qualitative, sorry. I don't know why it's not working quickly, fast, it's not very fast. Okay, now qualitative analysis is going too deep in interpretative approach, so you go and read the documents manually, and then you can combine the two information. For example, you see some anomalies in some values, and you try to understand why this happened. For example, a spike in the use of the word economy in the 30s probably is due to the crisis of the 1929. And you also apply qualitative analysis to explore the context. So you want to understand the context of a particular period, you go and see documents in that particular period. Other example of combined methodologies, thematic analysis, so use topic modeling to extract categories. Everyone knows what topic modeling is, okay? To extract a sort of categories in the discussions, topics. And then when you find a topic that is weird to you, you can go and understand why this theme was so important or how this theme was discussed. You can do, for example, semantic analysis, sentiment analysis. So you calculate the sentiment with a tool, and then you can, okay, in this period there was a bad sentiment about this topic, okay, try to understand why and go and read. This can be applied also to speaker comparison, historical trends, and so on. I will share these slides if you want, so I will put them on the website of the tutorial. So if you wanted to get after this meeting. It's not working, nothing works today. I'm very sad. Okay. Okay. Old style? No. Come on. Yes, it's not working. Okay. Quantitative analysis in practice. You can identify linguistic patterns. You can find social trends by using, for example, topic modeling. And to do this, there are some famous methods. The more common methods are quick, keyword in context, the analysis of the collocation, and the calculation of the word frequency. I think that all of you probably knows about this, especially word frequencies. We already said what you can do with word frequencies. Keyword in context is probably one of the most interesting way to analyze text because you usually select a keyword, so a word, and the keyword in context tool, we will see it in practice, will find all the times that the words has been used in the corpus. So you have the list of sentences where you can find these words. Sometimes in the corpora, they applied some ParlaSpeech tagging, so that, or lemmatization, so that you can also have the part of the speech, so if it's an adjective, a noun, and so on, and also to get the original lemma, especially in language like Italian or French, in which you conjugate the verbs. if I see andiamo, vanno, andare, and so on, they all belong to the same verb. So some corpora also release the textual analysis, but it is performed in an automatic way, so it's not very precise. But you can use it for studies about trends. This was about quick. About collocation analysis is you define a word, you define a span. Usually the span can be in number of words or number of characters, and you extract how many times a particular word appear in the same sentence with another word. And this is a collocational analysis, and you can understand the trends, how some words goes together in the discussion. The last one is word frequency analysis. It's an easier one, but you can also perform word frequency analysis on multi-words. So, for example, climate change is 2 words. And you can use it for a quick comparison between, for example, period of time when you have a really huge corpus to analyze. And there are some tools. These tools, for example, AntConc and Sketch Engine, can be used for all this analysis. Have you ever used these tools, AntConc or Sketch Engine? Sketch Engine is online. It's not free. I think it's free if you have a few data. Otherwise, you need to pay. But with Sketch Engine, you can share the information with other people. So you subscribe to Sketch Engine, you need to pay. You can upload your data, and then everyone can perform quick and word frequencies and so on your data set. It's online. AntConc is a software, so you need to download it. You can install. I have installed it on my computer, then we can see it later. And it performs all these kind of studies, but on your computer. So it's very useful for lesson, for example, but you cannot share the information with other people. Spacy is a linguistic analysis tool that performs, for example, part-of-speech tagging, lemmatization, and so on. And usually Spacy is used to associate this information, the part-of-speech and lemma, to the words, so that you can merge, for example, the same word with the original lemma. Okay, topic modeling and network analysis. By using the meta information, metadata that can be assigned to a politician, you can also, for example, build a network of politicians, of topics, of parties, and so on. And using this huge network, you can understand, for example, how trends changed in the world. For example, one of the famous trends that changed in the political parties was in the United States, where the Democratic Party in the first half of the 20th century was not against slavery, while the Republican Party was, and after the 60s, they changed completely their ideas. So the Democratic Party fought for abolish slavery, while the Republican Party was sorry, not slavery in the 90s. Rights for colored people, rights for black people. Okay. Sorry, slavery was in the 18th century. Okay, this is not working. As we said, you can do sentiment and emotion analysis. These are all stuff that you can perform automatically using some tools. Also polarity, controversial topics, detecting sentiment. There are also some tools that allows you to detect sarcasm, especially now with large language models. It's still a challenge. I mean, it's not very good in doing this. For example, I'm working on a project in which we try to identify whether a legal text is or not gender neutral. And this is very easy for a person, for a human, but it's very hard for also a language model. So a large language model is not very good in understanding whether a particular text, especially in Italian or French, that are languages that have genres in the words, to understand whether the text is gender neutral. I'll try it again. Probably too many people connected to the EduRoam. This is also interesting. There is a very good work about gender analysis in parliamentary speeches. For example, there is a study about how many women are there in the parliament, and also how effective are their speeches. For example, a study on the Slovenian parliament discovered that even if women are present in the parliament, they speak less than the male counterparts. So they have less importance in the speeches, even if they have the same rights. Okay. There are also some interesting information that you can catch about the electoral law. For example, in Italy, when the Statuto Albertino was released, only 3% of the Italians could vote. After 1946, 100% of the people could vote, and this is reflected in the people who represented the people, in the representatives, and also in the speeches and the topics. Okay, now we will switch to the description of the corpora, but we can have a 5 minutes break if you want to have a coffee, okay? You don't want to have a coffee?